Hello and welcome back to another Board Crazy review. This week we are doing Root. I am D. I am joined, as ever, by my, well, call you friends.
I'm Graham.
Acquaintances.
I got my fancy green shirt. First time wearing it.
Never worn that shirt.
Never worn green.
Yeah.
And I'm Will. Hello, everyone.
So, as we always do with these videos, we're going to quick run my introduction to the game from our gameplay video, which you can also watch if you haven't done so yet. There'll be a time displayed, which you can click to skip that if you aren't interested, but enjoy. Root is a game for 2 to 4 players, designed by Wehrle, with art by Ferrin, and published by Leader Games. Root is a game where players fight for control over a vast forest. Each player will be controlling their own faction, and each faction plays by its own rules. There are 4 factions included in the base game, one of which is the Marquise de Cat, which starts the game in a position of power with their units spread all over the board. Their path to victory is through their industriousness, as they chop down trees and then use the wood to build buildings at all the clearings found on the board. The Airy Dynasties are a proud group of birds who once controlled the Woodland, but have now seen their power relegated to a single corner of the map. Their path through victory is through aggression, building roosts throughout the forest and trying to control them as long as possible before they fall into turmoil. The Woodland Alliance are a group fighting back against the tyranny of their suppressors. They aim to unite the critters of the forest by spreading sympathy at the various clearings. They also use guerrilla warfare in battle, which makes them very difficult to defeat. Finally, there's the Vagabond, a lone wanderer who walks around the board and sort of plays his own game. He completes quests, collects items, and establishes relationships with the other players in his path to victory. While each faction has its own mechanics and rules which they must follow, there are also some shared rules which apply to all players. For example, when moving from one clearing to another, the player moving must rule either the clearing they're moving to or the clearing they're moving from. In order to rule a clearing, you must have the highest number of both warriors and pieces combined in said clearing. Each clearing comes in one of 3 suits: mouse, rabbit, and fox, which represents its populace. Likewise, all the cards in the game come in 4 suits, the same 3 as found on the board, and a 4th one in birds, which are considered wild cards. Most of the cards have a crafting component listed at the bottom, and a player may craft a card on their turn if they have buildings built in clearings matching the card's suit. Battles are resolved by the attacker simply rolling the game's 2 dice. The higher number is the amount of damage that the attacker does, while the lower damage rolled is the amount of damage that the defender does. Players will then remove 1 warrior per damage taken. If they have no warriors remaining, they will start removing their pieces from the board instead. The game is won in one of 2 ways. The main way is by earning 30 victory points. The other way is by playing one of the game's 4 dominance cards on your turn. The dominance cards introduce a new victory condition for that player, and they no longer earn victory points throughout the game. If, at the start of their next turn, they have achieved the objective listed on that card, they are then the winners.
Wow, D, I really enjoyed that.
I'm glad you did. Thank you,
That was
Graham.
completely insincere, Graham.
I don't think it was.
But, all right.
Let's talk about Root. Let's talk about Root, guys. Can't say it anymore. So where to begin? Will?
Let's talk about the rules.
Boom! Make it rain with rule books.
So, I'll get us going. I think they're very good. When you guys first tried to explain the game to me, I thought verbally, not the best. You can't really teach the game that way. Once I actually read both these rule books, starting with the learning to play, and then moving on to what's kind of like the rules reference of the law of Root, I got the game perfectly, and there are plenty of images in this rule book. There's no top down, but there's plenty of images. I'll use images overlays.
Yeah.
Good rule books
So,
to
Will,
explain complicated rules. I think they did a really good job.
let me ask you something. Now, you didn't like in Fallout how they had the 2 different rule books. Explain why you guys think it's all right here.
Well, I'm agreeing with Will here. Actually, I think these are
I know you are.
more than acceptable.
Yeah.
I think that the main difference is this game is easier to. It's way easier to learn. I think would probably be my main point.
Okay,
With the
then.
Fallout rulebooks, they kind of teach you, but you're constantly having to go back and reference.
Yes.
With this, there's not it's not a simple game, but it's just once you get it, and there's way less reference.
And they both have their specific uses. It's not like you're finding random stuff in each book, which I feel like was the case with the Fallout. It's like you know kind of where to go to when in this one when you have a question.
I mean, I will say the crafting is a little confusing. I will grant that much. The whole not just how it's explained in the rules, but just kind of in general, it's kind of counterintuitive a little bit in the way that you craft these items, you get the items don't really do anything.
Yeah.
Unless you're the Vagabond. So I feel like you read that, it's not going to necessarily be entirely clear until you kind of just figure it out. Once you do, it's not bad.
I mean, I want to, just as far as, I guess if we're counting this towards the rule, what I really liked about this game was the learn to play walkthrough.
Walkthrough is really helpful. It does the first 2 turns for every player. It tells you exactly what to do. So, I mean, it's not something you'd want to do more than once. It's just the first time you learn the game, it's actually really helpful to sort of understand how each house works.
Because as, like you said, Will, it was a little bit weird coming in to people who had already played the game and know how to play. And so I really liked that. I thought that was a cool way for to include that for your first game or two to follow that.
I think another thing that makes the rules really manageable in this game is that really the onus for each player is to learn the rules for your faction specifically, first and foremost. And then if you know what the other factions do and how they all work, that's helpful. But when it comes to like learning the rules, it's way easier for you if you have one section of the game to focus on, and everyone else kind of has their own thing.
Yep.
It's not super difficult to learn. Just one faction per playthrough. It's really not that hard. And, the rules that are shared between all players are really simple, I think. The combat, the movement, there's
like 3 to 5 extra rules you need to learn. Yeah, like the combat, movement, all real easy, to quickly grasp.
Yeah, a lot of the complexity just comes from the overall package, but you're not going to be absorbing all of that on one playthrough, basically.
Yeah. And I have some extra things I want to comment on. I want to come back to in regards to the rules and learning to play this game at the end of the review. I think they'll make more sense. So let's continue on.
Okay.
And let's get into the gameplay itself. Well, I mean, I think one of the biggest selling points of this game, we've already kind of hinted at it, is it's very asymmetric.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing their own thing.
Everyone's got their own
D
board.
has the faction boards here, some visual aids.
Everybody's got different rules.
Yeah, literally the game's broken down by 3 different stages of your
different
turn.
setups.
Yes, everyone has different setups. So
it's lunacy, but it works.
Yeah, so like at first you're confused. You see that like on the board, like there's a lot of orange out there, but they're only 1 per spot. And then there's a ton of blue clustered in one location. And then there's no green on the board at all. So it's kind of one of those things where it's a little intimidating at first, and I think I would say, I'll start with compliments. One of the pros of this game is how quickly it becomes apparent that these individual factions were balanced against each other in a very satisfactory or satisfying, would be a better word, way. And despite the fact that everyone's doing their own thing, there's actually a surprising amount of player interaction. I want you guys to piggyback off what I just said. What do you guys think of the asynchronous gameplay in this game?
I mean, it's the main selling point, isn't it? Obviously, having each of these factions working differently. So every time you can come back to this game and have kind of a completely new experience, at least a few times, by trying out different factions and stuff. Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and it works well together.
It does.
The balance,
for the most part.
Well,
it's never gonna be perfect.
No.
Yeah.
But considering how different they all are, I think it really does work well.
Well, what I was going to say is it's not necessarily the asynchronous, as Will described, of the game that I think it makes it so strong. It's how well they balanced that part of it that really is because if you have a game like this and it's not balanced well, it's gonna be terrible.
Oh yeah,
you're gonna hate it.
Unplayable.
But
pointless.
I mean, the way they did it, I think one thing that really it's really going to help is something like replayability and how now I want to try every single faction here. Yeah,
and the game does a really smart thing where on the back of your player boards, it doesn't just tell you how to set up the game, but it also gives you a little bit of a breakdown as far as like how each faction plays. Like the area here are low complexity, high aggression. So if you're stupid and angry, this is the faction for you. But no, it's also low card wealth, crafting abilities moderate, and it also gives you a little bit of an idea how the game is going to go for you. most of the time. So,
well, I do think though that this can lead me to one of my cons of the gameplay, and feel free to jump in at any point. But I think that one problem I've always had with games where you have a pre-assigned setup and you're playing as a faction that sort of has a play style, is that you can end up getting to these scenarios where the more you play the game, it starts to feel almost scripted in a way, where like the same kind of things happen over and over again. Or maybe there's two ways it can go. You like fight this one person or you fight this other person. Especially in a 3-player game, that's probably how it's going to be always.
yeah, but it's not all...
Because like in this game, even more so than in a game like Game of Thrones, which I just outright stopped playing because it would play out the same way every time, at least when I would play it. Like this game, I feel like and I haven't played it enough yet, but I have this, and I hate to speculate in reviews, but I have this nagging feeling that when we get to a certain point, it's going to start playing out the same way, especially because this game is you're so defined in your role. Like, what could you do to mix it up? I'm going to ask Graham so Graham can get in on this. What would you do to mix up with the Marquise de Cat? You're generally trying to build and just expand, and like, how would you mix up that strategy to make it more interesting after playing as them like 4 or 5 times?
That's a good question. I think in our gameplay, I went with just get recruiting stations out there so I can get as many guys on the board.
Yeah, you can focus on sawmills or workshops.
Yeah, We're focused on... The thing is, I found hurting myself in this game is I didn't focus on workshops, and then all of a sudden I found I couldn't use the cards that I wanted to use when they came up. So maybe you focus on workshops as opposed to recruiters, or
Okay, so you have 3 different types of buildings.
Yeah.
After 3 different sessions testing those out, you're probably going to end up returning to whichever mix, like whatever balance worked the best.
Ideally, you're not playing the same faction every game.
Yeah, but also...
you don't buy a game to just play it like 4 times, right?
No.
But 5, 6, 7 times.
Hold on. Let me finish here. Is that I'm saying it also depends on what other people are doing. So yeah, maybe if... I'm not sure. Maybe if the other factions are doing something where it's more beneficial for me to grab workshops and spread my workshops, then I'm going to do that. Or I'm not sure. Maybe someone's being more aggressive, and I just have to kind of play keep up and
It's possible.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I want to say, because I kind of disagree about the replayability of this game. First of all, you can pick and choose which of the 4 factions you want to use. So it's not going to be the same combatants on the board every time. If you get the expansions, you're gonna have even more options. So you can mix and match both what factions players are playing as, and also which ones are even in play, which should help a lot. You get plenty of games out of that alone. But also, this board is not just this board; it's also this board. Good catch. You got a winter board here, which is a different setup, different paths and stuff. Which should theoretically double the amount of playtime you get out of a game like this.
Yeah, when I was saying that I'm not 100% sold on the replayability of the game, I wasn't basing it on the board layout. I was basing it just on how the factions
You're saying the game always plays out the same way, always the same setup and everything. I'm saying it's not the case. You're going to have different setups and
you're still going to end up pursuing similar strategies regardless of how the board is set up.
But again, you're not always going to be playing the same faction, which I think is really...
There's not always going to be the same factions on the board.
Yeah.
I do want to say another thing about the gameplay.
Yeah.
Which is, I think this game does something kind of tremendous with how it tells a story through its mechanics. So I'll give an example with the Aerie, who I'm obviously most familiar with. If you've watched our video, I played as them. So how they work, or you get a little bit of backstory. They were formerly in power. They've lost their power, but you get the sense that they were kind of prideful. They are kind of prideful. And that when they were in power, they probably weren't very popular with the other critters in the forest. So throughout the game, you're playing cards into the decree, and those tell you what actions you can do. You can play a bunch of bird cards in your decree if you want, and that's going to give you a lot more flexibility as far as what you can do with the board short term. But when you fall into turmoil, and you probably are going to fall into turmoil, it hurts hard. Like, you're going to lose a lot of victory points. You lose one for each bird card. Now, if you instead start using cards from the other critters, the foxes and the bunnies and the mice and whatnot, you're going to be more restricted as far as what your actions you can do, but you're also not going to be hurt as much when turmoil comes around. But working together with the other factions, other critters on the board, and kind of the swallowing your pride it's a really clever way of showing the Aerie, their path to victory is actually sort of working with the others, not being so solitary or
right. That's
prideful.
That's really interesting. That's yeah.
Like it's really clever how the game will thinks the game might play out the same way every time. That's that's fine. But I think
well, if it's trying to tell a story and it plays out similar every time, then that actually kind of makes sense.
Yeah. I don't know. I disagree with that being the game playing out the same way.
But I think for a game so heavy, I was surprised at, and it's coming from me. I'm a guy who usually defends games that have a large luck factor. I'm starting to transition here into a conversation about luck. I think I was surprised at how much luck was involved in this game. And I'm not talking about rolling for combat. In fact, I think the way they did it is pretty much the best way to do it. You have so many warriors on a spot against so many warriors, and you can only deal as many hits as you have warriors.
I can see people getting frustrated with a game, like a war game like this, where the combat is resolved so simply, with just one roll of 2 dice and assign numbers, and that's it. But yeah, I think it kind of works here.
And theoretically, you could always lose. Like you could, or get in ties, what I mean? Or have situations where you're never really making that much of a difference through combat. That could... but that's with any dice roll. I'm going to accept that and just kind of like, I'm talking more with the cards. It's where, especially with 3 players, and we made comments in our video, so I'm drawing a lot from the video here. But I noticed that like, let's say for instance, the way your Eerie works is when you play cards to your decree, you have to do actions on certain spots based on what cards you play.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where you had no choice but to play a red domination card, I think. And you even said after, and then that forced you into constantly, like, that basically forced you into a situation where you had to go after me before I even gotten a foothold on the board. And that sort of, like, inadvertently, like, scripted the game towards you and I clashing for, like, the first half of the gameplay. Because I had to defend my base and you had to keep fighting it.
Yeah.
So...
But it's not always going to be like that.
It's not always going to be like that, but that's an instance of luck where, like, it can create a weird effect where now it can almost king make a little bit. Because, like, you're forced to do things on certain spots, but if there's a disproportionate, like if a disproportionate amount of one kind of, like, faction on those spots, then blue will end up going after one faction more than the other.
Another thing, though, I mean, like the board is not like symmetrical.
No.
So like where the Eerie, for example, would start depends on where the Marquise de Cat starts, and then you just start in the opposite corner, which can be any of the 3 suits. So yeah, I mean, there's luck involved, sure, but I would say it's not going to lead you down one consistent.
No, and on the flip side of that, if the Eerie drew a disproportionate amount of blue cards, and let's say Graham and I hadn't. And you could just keep playing blue cards to decree, allowing you to do whatever you want, wherever you want. That would have also created like an unfair... And then it would have been Graham and I sort of working to stop you from being...
Yeah, but again,
there
are rules to prevent... Like, again, the Eerie gets hurt if they use too many, or gets hurt a lot if the more they use the bird cards.
Yeah.
That's, I guess
which is, I mean, it works because, like, the Marquis, they benefit from getting blue cards. They can pretty much they need the blue cards to really have any
I think
to really see their true power. The blue card, except for the.
Well, I mean, there's benefits to them,
but like you said, in the end, it can really hurt you. It's like a high risk, high reward.
There were a few turns where you took 5 actions because you would have 2 blues.
Yeah,
and I could tell that. I don't know if D and I were drawing fewer blue cards, but I could tell that like it was just like there were a few moments where on my face I was just like, because I remember I couldn't draw, like I wanted to keep drawing blues because with green you need to play like 2 matching cards often or 3 matching cards, and those blues often bridge that gap, and I was just having the worst luck drawing blues.
But the first game I played of this, I drew 1 blue the entire game, and I came in last place.
Well, that's what I'm saying. If you don't draw blues, it really. Yeah. So it's a luck thing. So some people are going to hate
part of the game.
I'm not. If you can accept that, is the point. It's like, and I can because I'll play it more, but it's something that people need to consider.
I get a little frustrated with the luck, and that's actually probably the biggest complaint I had about this game. Was the luck involved with those cards and how much effect it really has on it. But I think the game plays quick enough that it's not a huge deal if you have an unlucky game.
All right, well, moving kind of on to, the product itself. Something I really love about this game is just everything about it, almost everything about it, is so reasonable in so many ways that a lot of games of this type, like heavy war games, I'm going to call it that for now, aren't. The price is fairly reasonable. You can probably, if you're, looking, find in like the $40 to $50 range But, you know, a lot of games like this are going to be like $80, $100, whatever. This is, you know, it's affordable. The box, reasonable. Look at it. It's tiny for a war game.
Yeah,
it's like
fit
it's like two Codenames boxes. It's you know, if you're a person like us who you've got like a billion games you got to fit on a shelf, that's a great game to have. You know, it's going to get a lot. You get a lot of entertainment out of it, and you can fit it.
I was picking through it earlier.
Yeah.
When I put it back together and it all fit like so tightly to the point where you could shake it and there's almost no moving parts inside.
Yeah, that's a good inlay. Oh. You can just kind of show that here. It has plenty of room for everything. Yeah, it's cut out specifically for the game. Also, the setup and cleanup times are real reasonable. There's not a ton of pieces to have to worry about. Especially once you know it, you can just kind of, in a few minutes, get everything where it needs to be. You know, you get cards, you got your pieces, you got the dice, you got the board, and these, you know, and that's kind of it.
Yep.
It's not like a billion things to have to consider.
No.
And the board lays completely flat, too.
Well, we're having a little bit of an issue with that, but yeah.
Our board's a little warped.
And the playtime for a game of this type, we've talked about that earlier a little bit, but yeah, it's super reasonable. You can get maybe under 2 hours, probably, if you're playing quickly enough.
And the artwork.
Well, I mean, that's not really reasonable. I would say that's more excellent.
Oh, yeah. I thought we were just kind of touching on components and stuff.
No, I'm talking about how this game is in so many ways such a good, like, value.
Yes.
And yeah, if it respects your time, it provides a good product. You know, it doesn't take up a ton of space. It's not going to break the bank. But yeah, the art by Kyle Ferrin is
fantastic.
Outstanding. The art style really helps counterbalance the usual kind of dark self-seriousness you normally get in a game of this type.
Right, that's a good point.
It generally makes it's a less angry experience.
There's a juxtaposition between the components and the gameplay and the backstory.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah, and it doesn't. It doesn't make it feel, I guess, as intimidating, right?
You're not like
you're cute little critters.
Yeah.
How could you?
So I do want to touch on the thing I said at the beginning. I had like one last point that I feel like would be for me a good way to wrap up my opinion of this game.
Yeah.
And these games in general, is that when you have a game like this where everyone has their own faction, their faction has their own individual rules and mechanics, they're extremely satisfying to play once you know them. But they have this. I would say there's a problem with games like this with the experienced player versus new player dynamic, whatever you want to call it, where someone newer to this game playing with people who've played it multiple times, they're going to have a hard time keeping up with the experienced players, because the experienced players will not only know how their faction works, most likely, but they'll also know how they play off each other and what tendencies maybe the individual player have, or what the individual faction's biggest strengths and weaknesses are. And you know, that isn't probably most gaming groups game together all the time. It's not that big of a deal. But if you're within a group that you bring in new people, or it's a rotation.
Yeah, if you have friends like some weirdo.
Yeah, like then it's something to consider. And I'm not even saying it personally bothers me so much, but I feel like it is. Like I could just tell that it is something to consider with this.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a big. I mean, if a person's like super competitive, then maybe a little bit. But
yeah,
it's not always about winning. You know, having fun is generally the main idea with board games. And also, you know, if that comes up, give one of the low complexity houses, take one of the high complexity houses for yourself and go from there, or use whichever one you're least familiar with. Final thoughts and stores. I think stores. I'm giving
Final Scots and stores.
I really, really like this game. I think it works really well. I think it's an easy game to recommend for all those reasons I listed earlier. It's not perfect, obviously, and we've laid out some issues it has, but So I'm excited about this game. I'm going to give it a 4.5 stars out of 5.
Oh, I thought you were throwing those at me. Jeez.
Okay, he just did.
I'm not someone who usually believes in love at first sight, but with this game, it was love at first sight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, actually, honestly, when I first saw this game, open it up and look, I was like, this game's going to be awesome. And turned out to be awesome. I really enjoyed it. So that, it was an enjoyable experience. I will get...
It was an enjoyable experience.
It was an enjoyable experience.
How many thumbs worth of an experience? Oh.
2.
Ooh, 2 thumbs up.
I give it 2.
The rare 2 thumbs up from Graham.
I feel like it's not rare for me.
All right, fine.
I give plenty of games 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, you did.
Anyway.
Will?
I do letter grades. Until I can play this game more, I'm gonna give it a tentative score. It's the first time I've done this.
Sure.
Or second
tentative score.
I'm giving it a tentative score of a B.
Okay. All right, I think that's going to do it for this review of Root. Thank you, everyone, for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and share it with all your friends so new eyes can get on us and we can get, you know, I don't know, good things happening in our lives for once. Oh, God.
What the hell was that? All right, Graham, let's give scores to his outro here. Did you get a C- for your outro so far?
I gotta get.
Social media. We have social media: Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram are all linked to in the description below. You can click on those, see what we're posting about. Might get an idea of what's coming up next. Until then, thank you for watching. Toodaloo.
You have something to say, Graham?
No, nothing.
You're done.
Done.
Bye bye.